Hey everybody, Jonathan Fields, and my guest today is Melissa and AJ Leon. They are the founders of a really fascinating company called Misfit Inc. And they spend their time partially traveling around the world involved in all sorts of philanthropic efforts and also serving as almost a tactical strike team for really interesting organizations. We're going to get into exactly what that means and also the pretty incredible journey that brought them from a radically different place to where they are now. So great to have you guys here with us.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
So let's kind of zoom the lens back because I want to know a lot more about Misfit Inc. But you guys have had a pretty incredible journey. This is not what you've been doing for like the better part of your lives.
No.
Take me a couple years back to sort of like what you were doing, your sort of your mainstream gigs,
Sure.
and then how you moved on from there.
Sure. I'll start. Well, in high school, all I knew to do was put a 9-inch ball in an 18-inch hoop. And then once I realized I wasn't going to be good enough to go pro, at college, I decided to study finance and accounting. So that's what I got into. Graduated with high marks. I did everything you're supposed to do as a kid going through college. You do the right internships and get the right degrees and get the right grades.
Right.
Ended up in a firm called PricewaterhouseCoopers, and day one I was like,
So you got the point job.
I did it. Yeah, I did it.
You've gotten everything that you worked for.
I did it. Day one I was just like, wow. And then day two I got to work and I realized I'd made a huge mistake.
Literally day two.
Day two. It occurred to me that I'd never really considered what I wanted my life to look like. That I just basically had followed the well-lit path all the way to money and wealth for yourself. So, but I was stuck like a lot of kids are stuck. So I just continued in that. One thing led to another, and then I ended up as a finance guy in New York.
Right.
And that's what I was doing. And then I became more and more and more depressed. And Melissa was a teacher at the time.
Yep.
Doing good things with her life.
And we should say also you guys are married.
Yes, we're
Were you married at the
That's
time?
true.
Were you dating?
We were dating.
Yeah.
But we've been dating for a very long time, since high school. So we've been through this journey together forever. And I can remember it was 4 days before Melissa and I got married, and I was sitting. I walked in my corner office and I was looking out the window, and I realized that if I didn't leave that job right then and there, and I was like 6 years into my career, I was doing pretty well, that I was going to be that dude for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So, that the prospect of that scared me much more than the prospect of not having any money or wondering how the we were going to pay rent the next day.
That's true.
So what's the conversation like between you around this? And what are you doing at this point?
At this point, I'm teaching in Spanish Harlem. English is a second language to middle schoolers, which is rewarding and challenging and, something that you can be proud of, but not what you see yourself doing for the rest of your life.
Right.
But, the conversation is kind of one of excitement, where you realize that we had worked together before. So we had started a company when we were young. It was an acting company.
Professional theater company, Shakespeare.
Starting it from the bottom, where you're just trying to make things work and figure things out, and left that and went to finance and teaching and
became big boys and girls.
Supposedly big boys.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, but then just realizing that if him leaving means that we can get back to what we enjoyed, which was doing stuff that mattered with each other. So it was more of an idea of like, oh wow, it's exciting. It's something that you can look forward to.
I had become just a shell of who I am as a person. I wasn't
That's
me,
true.
and I think a lot of people do that. You end up.
I went through a similar journey, so I totally get it.
Yeah.
So you're at this moment where you're about to get married. You're going through this awakening that, okay, I've gotten everything that I've worked for. I have everything that a lot of people probably around me think is sort of like, what you're supposed to aspire to, but it's not what you want.
Yeah.
So where do we go from there?
Well, at that point, I walk out of my office that day, no plan B. And when you think you're going to be minted, you don't save money, So we didn't have any savings. We just paid for a wedding and this great honeymoon to Africa, so we were just dry. But I walked out, and I remember hitting the street and just realizing that I was free. for the first time in 6 years, 7 years. I felt that I was free. And from that point, it wasn't as much, a lot of people say you got to find that one thing that you want to do with your life. And I don't think that that's reality for most people. I think reality for most people is you have to figure out what you don't want and what you don't want to be. I knew now that I didn't want to live a traditional life. I knew that I didn't want to be that finance guy with that, house in the Hamptons, and I didn't want to be that dude. We didn't want to go in that direction. And then it was a lot of experimenting.
It sounds like also you knew, and you both knew, that you didn't want to work without each other.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, from
that was huge.
Yeah. I remember, honestly, and I don't know if Melissa remembers, but I remember telling her about it, and I was basically, I said, I'm sorry. I just, our life is going to be pretty messed up from here on out, and or at least for a little while. And she looked at me and she's like, I'd rather live under the Brooklyn Bridge with you, the real you, than the guy you were.
What was it like for you when he was like at that point?
It's really strange to see somebody that you've known forever, and that person as a dreamer, a creator, somebody that makes things happen, to then go into this place where you're depressed and not creating or doing things that make you happy, to then see you come out the other side it's exciting. It feels like you're getting back to the person that you fell in love with, that you wanted to live a life with. It felt right.
So you get to a place where all of a sudden you become excited about getting this person that you've been missing back for a long time. During the years where sort of like AJ is going into that place, and you're kind of doing your own thing, I mean, were there conversations around this, you guys noticing this drifting?
Yeah. I remember having conversations about trying to think of ideas of things we could do, and then those conversations, and then it kind of just turning into nothing, where you're going down this path, and it's kind of hard to see, like, how do we get out of this? How do you turn?
And I think, the difficult thing is, I think when you're living a very conventional life, it's incredibly difficult to look at somebody else that isn't and chalk it up to anything other than luck. And that is, because and you identify people that are doing interesting things and living the life that they want. You can see it, and especially online. But then you just chalk it up to they got lucky, right place, right time, and all these things roll through your mind, and it just tells you that you're stuck.
Right. So how do you get out of it? It seems like for you, there was literally a moment where basically everything came to a head.
Yeah.
What was that moment like? Like for you? Where you basically just said, "I'm done."
For me, it was the day. It was 4 days before we got married, and just staring out of my corner office in Midtown that I worked so hard to get to. I had a very successful career, and being honest with myself, I'd go in there and cry sometimes. I knew how depressed I was. It wasn't, but that day, the day when you realize that if you don't stop what you're doing, you will never, ever regain yourself. You will never have redemption if you don't leave at that moment. You're going to be that person forever. I was up for promotion. If I got that promotion, you're talking about, maybe $250,000, $300,000 plus bonus. It gets to a place where money plays tricks on you, and economics, they hold your spirit hostage, and you're just so stupid to walk away. You turn that up to $1 million, now it gets even harder. And I knew that was going to be the case. It was looming. It was a new year, and I was going to get this new gig and all that. So then I just walked away, and I walked in and told my boss I was taking off. It was like a Henry V style soliloquy on like the corporate world and all. I took the elevator down and I walked out.
Did you know this was coming?
No.
That day?
No, I didn't. I was in Florida already because that's where our family is. So I was 4 days before our wedding.
Right.
I was sitting in the car with my mom and got a phone call and was like, okay, Cool.
Her mom loved it, by the way.
Oh, my mom
Because that was my
hated
next
it.
question. I'm like, you're about to marry this guy who's like a $1 zillion banker with a tremendous, like, the career that every, like, supposed in-law thinks is,
Yeah.
like, we're good, like, and a lot of parents would be like 4 days before the wedding, freaking out.
Yeah.
Like, but it sounds like very different.
No,
she
it
freaked
wasn't. I was
out.
kidding.
Oh, okay.
I was totally f***ing with you. She freaked out.
She was not. She was like, "What are you gonna do?" I was like, "I don't know, but we'll figure it out."
Right.
I remember sitting in our honeymoon in like this tent in Namibia, because I planned this whole really cool African honeymoon, and it was and we were sitting in this really in the desert in Namibia, and just with our yellow pad out and just jotting down, like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna pay rent next month? What is our life gonna look like? And that was when we started to sketch out. And at that point, what we really did was we started identifying the things that we didn't want our life to be,
And the things that we did want.
yeah, and putting our priorities on a list, which were
Travel, working together, doing things that mattered, being able to work, empower social justice projects.
Devote some portion of our time to nonprofit projects, like in the field and stuff. And there was just a list of
Not have an office was
Yeah.
one of the things we didn't want.
So where do you go from there? So you're hanging out in Namibia on your honeymoon with a yellow pad, making your list, which is very romantic, obviously.
Oh yeah. It was,
Wondering how you're going to pay New York City rent when you come back. How do you go from there to this really fascinating life that you've built now, which we're going to explore?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of failure, a lot of just trying and things not working out. I mean, the first thing that I did was I went back to what I knew. So I went, okay, we can start up a little management consulting thing, and I can do that, and I can get clients, I know some people, and I started putting that together. And
So it's like your own version of what you were doing.
Precisely. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's not, that's where you go. And you're like, because at first you think being an entrepreneur, it's just freedom, and as long as I'm my own boss, you're fine.
Right.
But then at some point, sometimes you're building something and you realize that you're back in prison, but the difference is now it's locked from the inside and you're holding the key.
And I think that's such a big thing that so many people miss when they want to move from big corporate jobs into entrepreneurship, is a lot of times I think, well, it's the lack of absolute control over everything that I really hate so much. And sometimes it is, but a lot of times they then get there and they realize, A, you never have total control because you're always serving somebody.
Precisely.
And B, you're working a lot harder than you were before.
Yeah.
And it's not actually the lack of freedom or control that was killing you. It's the content of the work itself. It's the nature of the work.
Yep.
And then you're like, okay, now what do I do?
Yep. And that's exactly, it's like
That
this,
was the
it's-
evolution.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like
Absolutely.
the second, it's the reawakening where you're just, and some people never get there. Luckily we did. I mean, we got about 2 clients in, I realized that we were trapped.
Yeah.
And I was doing something. I was doing the exact same thing,
Right.
as what I'd done before, except I was, I'm holding the key to this prison cell now.
So, and what are you doing in the organization at this point?
Teaching during the day and then coming home and
Okay.
working all night on this
Right.
stuff.
So you went back you were still teaching
Yeah.
then? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're working up in Spanish Harlem, and which is a tough neighborhood in New York City school systems. Teaching English as a second language, tough job, emotionally draining job.
Yeah.
At the same time, coming home and essentially working a second job, like working with AJ to try and build this new thing. One of the things that is really interesting to me, so many people explore, is like, if you're trying to build something on the side, how do you know when it's the right to kind of like go from here to here, and how do you get the energy to do it?
Yeah.
The energy comes from wanting to leave the thing that you're currently in. The energy comes from, you know what, this will pay off eventually, and we'll get there.
Yeah.
You're right. It's draining. It's terrible, but it's the prospect of that being able to change and being able to leave whatever it is, whether it's teaching or, consulting, whatever that thing is, you're leaving that. It's like you said before, the idea of staying in that is much more terrifying than,
Than
trying to
treading
go
a new
on
course.
something new. Yeah.
So, but at some point, you have to transition from the push from the current or the old into more of a pull from the new.
Yeah, sure.
But I get the challenge is when you don't know exactly what the new is,
Yeah.
it's hard to develop the pull.
Yeah, it was. I mean, for us, it took a bit of time, because we were that whole first kind of phase was, about 6 or 7 months where we have clients, and it was basically management consulting. And then we had to re-engineer. And the one thing that Melissa and I have always been very good at is quitting. We have no problem saying, that's not going to work, next, and then we just figure out the next thing. The more things you try, the more opportunity for you to figure out the things that you actually do like to do. So then we basically made our way from there to the web, and not just creating products and whatnot, but designing websites, creating strategies and campaigns for companies, and we ended up kind of slowly getting in that direction.
Okay, so Spanish teacher, public school system, former management consultant, decide that you want to design websites and go online. Clearly you were well prepared for this journey.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean,
what do you do? So you go for something like, you essentially have zero skills.
Yeah.
But you're like, this is something that we want to do. This looks really cool.
Yeah.
And is anything in your brain saying, we're not worthy, we're not qualified, nobody's going to hire us, we don't know what to do?
Yeah. I mean, there's an element of that. There's an element where you think, no one's going to hire you to do stuff like this. And then there's a piece of you that believes, we used to produce Shakespearean theater. We never knew what the hell we were doing then. And we, took $1 million insurance policies out and build 16-foot high Roman structures and warehouses so it's that sense in which you've been there. In a way, you've been there before, and you're not afraid to try something new.
Right. So it's just kind of like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So what does this turn into? Talk to me about what you've built.
Yeah, well now, I mean, basically Misfit today, and we use those core ideals that we jotted down, those core principles of the things that we wanted to accomplish with our lives, like working together and travel. We have a large client services end where we design websites, so we actually do it now, we design websites. Marketing strategy.
By the way, we're gonna. I think we need to float into this video that first website that you showed that you designed. It was so beautiful.
It's the worst.
So terrible.
It was somebody paid for that too, man. That's what I feel bad. I feel like I still have to expiate my sin there.
That's not on your portfolio page?
Oh god. Oh yeah, it's right there prominently. It's a Flash website, which is the worst. But yeah, so today, I mean, it's basically, Misfit is a series of vignettes, the largest of which is a client services business, which, we do website design, we've done iPad app design, strategy. We work with very few clients, but we work at a very deep level. So it's usually, we'll work with a client and do 15 projects over the course of 2 years, as opposed to doing 15 projects with 15 different clients.
Okay.
Which is fine if you're trying to build, because we're not trying to build a very large agency side. We're like the corner coffee shop of web. We just like our customers and having a few and handcrafting every espresso for your liking.
And I think that's really important also to own. Is it because a lot, like you see, it's so easy to say, okay, we're doing a new thing.
Yeah.
And then you start to get traction. You're like, sweet, let's grow this sucker as big as we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you guys are so clear. I think that's one of the things that really just makes you work so well at what you want and what you don't want.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, is that written somewhere?
Yeah. I mean, we have it at home. I mean, we still have this list that we drew up. And we have conversations. I mean, we've always had basically daily conversations where we go over where we feel like we are. But I think you keyed in on it. It's what you don't want. For us, most people want to scale. Some things scalability is great, right? To scale your business, but infinite scalability, I believe, is a fallacy, because it's not always what people want. People don't always want to turn into Walmart. Maybe some people just want to have 3 shops in the East Village.
Yeah, I think so many people want to scale because they feel like they can.
Right.
Or they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Right,
Sure.
or they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but without thinking, okay, how is this going to affect the way I want to live my life?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dude,
And
that's it.
and that's the big missing question that I think a lot of people don't revisit. And I wonder also, you guys working together as a team and so closely connected to the things that you want and don't want. And also, I think a lot of solo founders don't have this person where they can constantly, sometimes say, remember those things that really matter to us?
Yeah.
Maybe you have a partner, but I think your partnership in life is so much deeper that you're both on the same page.
Absolutely. No, it's true. because your wife, I mean, your spouse, no one's going to be as honest with you and just look at you and say, dude, we said we wouldn't do this.
Right.
You know, and sometimes it's one and sometimes it's the other, but to have that, it's just invaluable.
Right.
You know?
I mean, going through so part of it is about serving clients' needs.
Yeah.
Part of it also is that, so the big goals, like we want to serve clients, we want to work together.
Yep.
We want to build something together, and we want to travel a lot.
Yeah.
And we want to serve other people.
Sure.
Or others. So talk to me about that other part of what you
Cool.
build.
So, I mean, from day one, we wanted to dedicate 20% of our business to nonprofit work. So, and not just nonprofit work, but to people that we term as change makers. It's a very loose term, but it's basically people who are using whatever influence they have to make a deep impact in some part of the world. And we've been doing that since day one. That website that you saw was actually a part of that.
So tell the story behind
Sure.
the chance meeting that you had that kind of led to this whole incredible thing.
So we went to see a film in the East Village on Emmanuel Jal, who's an ex-Sudanese war child who was saved by a British aid worker, and now he's a rap artist in the UK.
Europe,
Yeah. At the end of the movie, he's standing on a plot of land that he got from the Sudanese government to build a school. That's what he wants to do because he thinks if he can educate children, then they won't pick up guns and kill each other. So at the end of the film, I think it was you who asked the question.
Yeah, sure.
Just, to the directors, so where are you with the school?
Yeah, there was a little Q&A with the director producer, which was freaking sweet. I mean, the guy who's in the film is standing right there.
Yeah.
And we just...
It was kind of a runaround of basically nothing had happened. So we went to a party afterwards, and we were just really touched by the story. We were just asking Emmanuel, like, what's going on? Like, how's it going? What's the story? Where are you with the project? And he basically said that he doesn't know rich people and he hasn't raised any money.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I mean, he turned to me and he's like, brother, 2 years ago, I was rapping in the slums of Kenya. Yeah. I don't know anyone with money. There's no, we need, $150,000 to build a school. I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And I remember, I mean, this is right at the beginning of Misfit. Mm-hmm. So we have veritably no skills. We've never had one client. We basically made $1. I think we coaxed some guy in Craigslist into doing like some little campaign for like $10 for him. That's how, bottom of the barrel we were. And I looked at him and I just told him, we can do this. I don't know anybody rich either, but I know a good story when I hear it, and we can get behind you and we'll stay with you until the last brick is dropped in Lear, Sudan. So that started the M Academy project, and it was a pro bono campaign, so we didn't charge any money for it. But the premise of it was to tell Emmanuel's story, to crowd fund this school in South Sudan, and make a long story short, we did it. 9 months later, basically through the most bootleg marketing campaign you could possibly imagine.
So what were some of the things that you did? Because did you just say 9 months later, we did it?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that would love to, figure out some sort of campaign to raise $150,000 for anything, but to stare this person in the eyes, and say, I am going to make this happen.
Yeah.
You got to own that on a very deep level.
Yeah.
We made crazy things. Like, we do videos every day on YouTube telling different parts of Emmanuel's story and talking about different people who had got involved. They were terrible videos, but it just told the story on such a real, raw level that people were able to connect.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we identified is that we didn't have the juice to be able to market this story. We just didn't have it. It was just me and Melissa at the time. Right. It was me, Melissa, and then we had like an admin, Dino, who's now a partner and our lead developer, but we were tiny. So we needed to figure out a way, some mechanism to get people to fundraise on our behalf, to basically put the story out there and then create interesting ways in which people could fundraise and inspire them to do so. And a lot of times everybody wants to change the world. Sometimes you just have to give them the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of mantra of the campaign. So then we would put those nuggets out there, like, okay, this piece of the school needs to be funded. Can anybody, come up with an idea for fundraising, whatever. And over time, we had kids in Harlem doing bake sales and like selling brownies and raising $600. I remember a Japanese artist that came as part of the Facebook fan page or cause page.
It was a cause page
My
at
God,
that point.
it was like the stone age of new media. And he we were using Google Translate to get back and forth with each other, and his name's Haru. And I had no idea what the he was trying to tell me. And I remember just sending him a message and just saying, Haru, do whatever you want. It's an open campaign. Don't ask for permission. Just cool,
right.
Exclamation, anime. And and then he came back with this poster of him. I didn't know who he was at the time, but of this poster that he had created. And he's an artist in Japan. I mean, he's a solo artist. He's a musician, and he raised $4,000, sent it in. And so through a series of basically a disaggregated marketing campaign where we just told the core story and created ways in which people could fundraise on behalf of this. I think it was one of the first, certainly, nonprofit crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Did it on the back of a cause page. I mean, there were no sophisticated tools like Sprout or any of those. I mean, nothing had come out.
From this random meeting and a promise that was made with just basically out of thin air.
Yeah.
You guys moved heaven and water and earth to just make this happen.
Sure.
One of the things that you said is, everybody wants to change the world, they just don't know how. And I think that was something that you guys stumbled upon. It sounds like that was so incredibly powerful, because if you guys realize you don't have to reach yourselves.
Yeah.
But if you can figure out how to give a whole lot of other people the simple instructions or the basic tools to go out there and figure out how to be a part of changing the world in a very simple, high leverage yet low effort way.
Yeah.
You can make amazing things happen. And it sounds like you tried everything.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of stuff didn't work, and I'm sure you start to hone in on the stuff that really worked.
Yeah.
So from there, I mean, what's interesting to me is there's a huge cause element to what you do, obviously. And that's the seed of this part of the business. But, it seems like you've grown that part of it into a lot of, and we both live in New York City.
Yeah.
You guys are never here.
Yeah. Our poor apartment is very
right. You're in a tactical strike force somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or you're, in a couple of days after we're filming this, where are you guys going?
We're going to go to Malawi.
So what are you doing there?
We're working with an NGO called WaterAid. And they work on sanitation and water projects, and it's basically the same thing that we did for Emmanuel, but at a higher level with budget that they're again, it's a pro bono project. So all these social projects that we do are pro bono. We don't make money off of them. But the goal is to raise 1.2 million pounds by creating village content platforms and creating online communities around stories in this area in Malawi.
I think the connection is it's similar to the first project in that project we tried to empower others to tell the story, and in this we're trying to empower people on the ground who are being affected by the change to tell the story.
Local people there on the ground.
Yeah. So
what is it that pulls you so deeply to the need to do this?
The social aspect?
Yeah.
Probably that meeting with Emmanuel was really transformative. When you meet somebody who has really, really been through the eye of the needle, I mean, somebody who has really been in the weeds in their life, it changes your perspective. I think also the more you travel and the more of the destitution that you see in the world, it makes you feel like if you can do something, you should. And,
you feel grateful for the life that you have.
Yeah.
When you do see other people that are in a position where they don't have the opportunity, so we do, and
a lot of people champion us, but what I look at somebody in WaterAid, I'm like, these people dedicate their freaking lives to this. Some people go and they live in Malawi, they'll live in that area for 2-3 years. And if they're willing to do that, if we can come and support them for a couple weeks, a couple months, put together a nice, campaign and help them out, then we should do that.
Right. So one of the questions that fascinates me, and it's the name of this whole project, it's called the Good Life Project, is what does it mean to live a good life? What does it take? And I'm curious what your guys, how would you explore that question?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
To me, a good life is what we're doing now. It's traveling, it's doing work that matters, being able to affect change in the world where you can, being together. that all of that is, to me, what would make life worth living.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's probably similar. I think it's just not living the life that everyone else intended for you. Being deliberate about the way that you live your life, and being very, very, very deliberate with each decision you make. And whether it's taking on new clients or growing a business or traveling, it amazes me sometimes how people, you build something and you don't ask the questions of why or why not. So I think that's...
No, I love it. And I think that's such a huge thing, is that so often we just ask how. So often we don't even ask how, we just do.
Yeah.
Because it seems like it's been prescribed for us. And then some ask how, and then some, very few, pull it back even further and ask why.
Yeah.
Why does this matter to me? Why does it matter to the world? Why am I doing it?
Exactly.
And that's and I think a lot of people don't ask the question because they know the answer they're going to get would require substantial disruption.
Yeah.
And they don't want to endure it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, well, I love talking with you guys. I love. Thank you so much for sharing your stories.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. That's good.
And I love what you're building with Misfit Inc. So thank you so much for being here on the show.
Thank you.
So Jonathan Fields with Melissa and AJ Leon signing out.